Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun. All right, guys. Tuesday. Again, it is going to be a little bit of an odd week because we have a holiday on Thursday. Pretty tight so far. Oh, about 4 ticks. They've actually extended the range here just while I was trying to start the stream. But we do have some events today. We've got President Lagarde and Powell speaking at a panel event, and we have the Jolts, which tends to be a pretty significant mover these days. So let's come and look at the charts. So there's a couple of interesting things happening. So yesterday we had a pretty wild sell yesterday. That little spike up there was that news. Actually, you know what I should do here on these indicators? I should add the news indicator thing here. Right? Where is it? News warning. There we go. Yay. Okay, so now you can see the ISM was pretty weak and that spiked the treasuries up, but then they just kept selling. I think I need to adjust these a little bit so that maybe I can move them, or I don't know. I have a different way of labeling things that allows me to move it up and down. Maybe I'll use that instead. Anyways, we are moving up in the overnight session and retracing a lot of that. I think that this still supports the idea that it was actually the Japanese central bank selling and not that this was a play on Donald Trump. Although, it could be that was a play on Donald Trump and they're just done with it too. So still not conclusive. S&P 500 looking a little sad in the overnight action. I didn't see anything obvious in my reading as to why that would be. Oil, though, extending higher a little bit here. So they had a pretty good day yesterday, and now they're continuing to push on. And 85 is now within sight. Silver and gold still kind of struggling in that range. Copper still struggling, but you know what? This price right here for 4.45 is not a terrible price for copper. I mean, they had a big run up earlier in the year. They're okay. They might just kind of range here for a while. Then we got the Japanese yen. Oh, it still looks super sad over there. Are they going to come in and intervene at some point? I kind of feel like that they will, but you're not seeing it. And the dollar, super strong overnight. We're using something I should note is that for the synthetic dollar index, we use the FX futures, but there is going to be a difference between the basis between the FX futures and the spot cash forex instruments, right? The spot index is at 106 right now. So that's kind of interesting. So that's where we're at. Let's come in, and before I forget, let's do our notes right away. So first thing here is let's close yesterday's notes, move them to 0701.md, and then copy the template over. Okay, so some flows here. Powell and Lagarde speaking. This one is probably not going to drive too many flows, but it may kind of have people hold back until it happens. Okay? And then we have the Jolts. We have Jolts. I don't think that we have any auctions today or anything like that. So what else do we get today then? Well, we might need to think about that a little bit, because is that really all we've got for flows today? Let's note that downside selling in treasuries subsided overnight. And selling in the past few days, overnight they subsided. So that flow may be done. Okay. So I guess that leaves us with likely to be range bound until Jolts. I might be able to pull out ticks, but I think it's likely to be pretty tight here. Yeah, yen drifting lower overnight. It's actually on the upside right now, but I guess we'll see what happens. You know, if they come in and it starts selling again, and I'm seeing the yen drop along with it, then I think that is a pretty good sign about what's going on. Okay, so morning Octavius, Paul, Paul, Alan White, Namrus, Robert, Dick. So I tell you what, like, I really do have like the most dedicated audience on YouTube. It really is. You guys are here every day. Jesse James, it's a great name. First time here. Thank you for stopping by. Let me know how you found the channel. Like, what was the first video that YouTube showed you or whatever? I'm always interested to know. I need to make a new video. I think the next video that I'm going to put out is going to be, are index funds evil? That one should be fun, because I kind of think that they are a little bit. I mean, they're not evil, but I kind of would like to see some changes. I would kind of like to see some changes. Let's put it that way. Well, I'm just going to give a quick little peek around here. Today might be a little bit of a... So one of the issues that I also think we're going to see here, in terms of discussion, is that the internet is so obsessed with the Supreme Court immunity decision that it's really like there's like not a whole lot else going on, basically. So I guess we're going to have to talk about it. I think we're going to have to talk about it. Do you want to talk about it? I don't know if you guys really care. Do you guys really care? I'll tell you one thing, like, just beyond that decision, the amount of hysteria, like mass formation hysteria that I have seen on Reddit in the past week is just absolutely insane. Like, they are losing their minds, and especially with like the debate and Biden and all of that sort of stuff, like, they don't know what to say anymore. It's like in some subreddits, you're not allowed to talk about it. It's like the marching orders haven't been given, and so you're not allowed to say anything. I can't take people seriously if they're terrified of Trump being a god king, but not Biden. Dude, I'm totally with you on that. Like, there were so many situations where it would have been completely within Donald Trump's benefit to do something kind of dictatorial, and he didn't. Like, I wouldn't say that he didn't want to do them, but they always talked him out of it, right? Whereas with Biden, every chance that he has had to override, the courts, like one example that just really ticks me off is the whole student loan forgiveness thing. That the Supreme Court comes in and says, no, you can't do that. That is not the way that law was supposed to be used. And so then he just goes and he does it again with pretty much the same setup, different law. Okay, well, let's wait for this one to go through the courts. That is like, oh my gosh. Biden has taken the approach of, the presidency has too much power and I'm going to abuse it as much as possible. Now, nobody's assassinating anybody. This is the, man. This whole thing about, like, okay, so, like, I can see here on the, well, like, one of the top stories on Zero Hedge right now is Democrats hint at assassination in response to Supreme Court immunity decision. Okay. Are they really serious about, I don't think that anybody's actually serious about that, okay? Nobody's assassinating anybody. But, oh my gosh. It's just, it's again, hysteria. It's literally hysteria. I don't know. I have a little bit of oatmeal here. Let me eat the oatmeal, and then I'll tell you about, like, what's really going on. Like the reality of this Supreme Court decision, okay? Because the reality is kind of funny, actually. I think that it's kind of funny. Except for whistleblowers against Boeing, they get assassinated pretty regular. Yeah, there you go. Oh, man. Yeah, hold on. Let's eat a little bit. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't get over the fact that people went into space on a Boeing craft and actually thought it would function as intended, and now they are stuck in space. Wait, did that happen? Who went into space on a Boeing craft? I hadn't seen that story. What am I missing? Okay, they sent astronauts to the International Space Station, and the Starliner was a piece of malfunctioning Boeing shit, and so they stuck on the International Space Station. It looks like that is actually the case. Actually, oh, that's interesting. It kind of sounds like, let me see if I can read this a little bit here. The return to Earth of Boeing Starliner capsule is on indefinite hold pending the results of new thruster tests and ongoing analysis of helium leaks that cropped up during the ship's rendezvous with the International Space Station. But agency officials insisted Starliner Commander Barry Butch Wilmore and co-pilot Sunita Williams are not stranded in space. We don't have a targeted landing date. We're not going to target a specific date until we get that testing completed. So essentially it's complete the testing, complete the fault tree, and bring that analysis into, and then we have an agency level review, yada yada yada. Okay, so the problem is that Starliner's service module, which houses the helium lines, thrusters, and other critical systems, is discarded before re-entry and burns up in the atmosphere. Engineers will not be able to study the hardware after the fact, and as a result, they want to collect as much data as possible before Wilmore and Williams head home. Oh, okay. So that's interesting. So they're saying, what they're saying is that the craft has the ability to go home right now, but they want to know what is wrong with the craft before they do that, because once they've returned home, their ability to investigate is gone. That's interesting. I have a neighbor who works at NASA and worked on that launch. That's really fascinating, man. But you know what's fascinating to me is I haven't seen a thing about that. How did I miss that one? There is a gaping hole in my news, because that sounds like a story that I would pick up on. What's with that? Weird. I mean, I am seeing it on like mainstream outlets like CBS News and stuff. I didn't see it on Reddit, for instance. You would think that you would see that on Reddit. Maybe I did see it on Reddit and I just like glossed over the headline. According to Morgan Stanley, the growing prospect of a Donald Trump victory makes yield curve steepeners appealing because inflation would likely accelerate under such circumstances. This is from Alligator in Discord. So you know what? I have a big problem with this narrative. Not that I'm saying that it's not that it's impossible that that's what's moving the markets. It could be that that's what's moving the markets. But I think that if that is what's moving the markets, that the people that are trading this have a huge blind spot. Okay, because Donald Trump has been the likely winner of the presidential election for months now, and only now you're figuring it out and trading on it. Okay, whatever. And then the whole kind of theory that I think that they're trading it on, saying that like steepeners are attractive and that yields should increase again because they're concerned about inflation again, that inflation would likely accelerate under a Trump presidency, is basically all based on what I consider to be pandering from Donald Trump, things that aren't likely to actually become policy. It wouldn't surprise me to see like a tariff war with China again. He hasn't talked about it, but I don't see why he wouldn't want to finish the job, right? But like Biden never really took those tariffs off, right? So I'm not so sure that that's like a huge deal, especially if like the economy is slowing right now, you know? And that's another thing, is that Donald Trump only did the trade war thing because his tax plan that got passed gave him so much room, right? Like the economy was going so well and the stock market was going so well that it was like, okay, we can afford to take a little bit of risk and kind of do this thing with China over a summer, right? Didn't completely destroy the economy. Okay, if we're going into a recession, he's going to look at that and he's going to be like, well, we need to do everything that we need to get a recession fixed. Or if we're starting to see inflation, he's going to say, oh, well, we need to do everything that we can to fix inflation. And he's not going to do the tariffs. He's not. So I think that you could make money on these steepeners in the short term, but then like when the actual policy comes through, I don't think that it's going to happen that way. But I also kind of wonder how much of it is just kind of like, you know, self-fulfilling prophecies trying to make things happen so that you can reduce the chances of Donald Trump getting elected. Like, oh, now that it looks like Trump's going to be elected, inflation is accelerating already. Okay. It's not going to happen that way. I don't really think he's that serious about the tariffs thing. His economic advisors are going to stop him.
How long would it take a newbie to be able to live on order flow trading? Oh man. How do I put this? Infinity. I think that if you're a newbie and your goal is to live off of order flow trading or really any other kind of trading, I would find a different goal. Like, that doesn't mean don't trade. Trading can still be a very rewarding thing. But to even stand a chance at this game, you need to be able for it to be a hobby. You kind of have to be okay with it just being a hobby. All right. Because the thing is that income with trading is extremely inconsistent. For retail traders, some of the best retail traders, they're really making like all of their money in 1 month of the year. Oftentimes it's like they will just kind of tread water most of the year, and then 1 month they'll make a ton, right? And that's going to be like what you live off of. I tell you what, man, you're not going to trade well when the next meal depends on whether this current trade works out or not. It's just, and overall the game is very much tilted against you as a retail trader. The things that back in the 80s and 90s that people were doing as retail traders to make money and make a living off of it have pretty much been taken over by the robots. So that's not to say that there aren't people out there doing it, okay? But they're like 1 in 1,000, like literally, especially in the future space. Okay, trading futures is extremely difficult. If you're like swing trading stocks, you might make some money. Probably it's going to be like less than if you were just buying and holding the stocks, but okay, you can make money swing trading. So really, that is not the path. Like, I think that you're starting out with goals that are unrealistic and are going to disappoint you. And what's likely to happen is you'll just burn out real quickly, right? I've been doing this, 6-7 years now, and I don't always make money every year. So, no, I didn't realize that you were in a position. Oh, you were a long 14. Okay, well, that was a quick look. I mean, this is kind of seems like a range so far, but it is to the upside. Maybe we get an uptrend today. Yes, you will need other income while trading. Yeah. You gotta understand. So, like, here's the other thing. Like, especially if you're young. If you're young, seriously, go and work on Wall Street. Don't day trade. Go and trade for a bank or a hedge fund or an index fund or one of those. Okay, that will that's a real trading and is infinitely better than retail trading. Retail trading is for those of us that screwed up. Like, there's a very thin and narrow track to become an institutional trader. It's like you got to go to the right school and get an internship and get hired right out of school directly into like the trading side of the business and yada, yada, yada. I didn't realize that was the track until I was basically graduated, and I was graduating with a degree in computer science. Oh, and by the way, you have to live in New York. I don't want to live in New York. So, I fell out of the track, right? That's how you end up being a retail trader. So it's not for people that are smashing it and successful at every turn. No, it's for those of us that screwed up somewhere. Even though it's maybe not necessarily our fault, it was unintentional, we didn't know better, or whatever the deal is, right? But that is just the way that it is. I would never want to aspire to be a day trader. I've realized. It's probably not what Stiggy wants to hear, but it's the truth. I would say have 5 years plus 2 years of money. 5 years of experience plus 2 years of money for expenses on hand at all time. Yeah, like if you were really to the point where you were making money, before I would even think about taking it full time, I would want to have multiple years worth of my expenses covered. I don't know about the 5 years sort of a thing. Because, you know, like in stocks, you can get lucky and things can accelerate real quickly. But would you still want to work for a quant fund now? I think so. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly which way you're taking that. It was like, if I could go back, would I focus everything towards being a quant trader and try and get hired at Jane Street or something like that? I think probably. I don't know if I would necessarily change anything about my life, because I wouldn't have all of the other things in my life, and I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And I don't think that I would be as great of a person. So I'm happy that it went the way that it did. And at the end of the day, I am a better computer programmer than I will probably ever be a trader. I don't think I will ever be a better trader than I am a computer programmer. I am just much like when it comes to like my natural gifts and so forth, I am much better suited to computer programming. That doesn't mean that I'm like unsuited to trading. Okay, but there are some things I am a little bit more neurotic than the average person, I think. I have a hard time focusing, staying focused through the whole thing. I don't like taking on excessive risk, you know. So there are some things that kind of work against me as being a trader. But when it comes to computer programming, I just like everything is my way. I was born to do that, right? So probably I should always have been a computer programmer. But could I be a computer programmer programming market algorithms? Yes, I probably should have gone down that route. But if I had known and the things to do and everything at the time, I would have gone down that route and moved to New York and lived there, right? Now the split side is, if somebody came to me and was willing to give me a remote job doing some sort of quant work, yeah, I would take it in a heartbeat. But if they wanted to make me a trader and I had to move to New York, I would try. I don't know if I would actually be able to do it. Have you tried machine learning on bonds like LSTM and RNN? Okay, so those sort of time series models that you run on like daily time series to try and predict how big the next day's move will be and whether it will be up or down or whatever, those are models that I have not used a whole lot. But the thing is that those models are used for like a different time frame of trading, right? Like ultimately, I day trade because I want to be involved. I think is like one of the big motivating factors for me to day trading. I can be involved. I can see what's going on the front line. Part of this is like, I day trade so that you don't have to. Like somebody that doesn't want to day trade, but maybe they swing trade or they buy and hold stocks, and they feel like, well, I want to be on the front lines so I can see what's going on, but I don't want to take trades. Then you can watch me and you can get all of that vantage point and benefit of being on the front line from watching the stream. And so for me, I like to be involved, watching on the front line. And that means that you're looking at different things, right? Like the most important thing for us to look at on the intraday basis is economic releases and breaking news. It just is. It is the most powerful flow within that time frame. Like if you screw that up, almost nothing else matters. So I haven't done too much on those. I am doing some work on machine learning and on momentum strategies and on portfolio level strategies, because I am moving towards, hey, maybe I want to run a fund. I don't know how it's going to work with everything else that we do on the YouTube, but I kind of want to start a fund. I want to start a fund because I think that there might be an opportunity to start a fund that would allow everybody to be able to get in. Like a hedge fund that everyday people can get into. It's just, you would have to take a test first. You pass the test, and then you can invest in our hedge fund. That's my dream. That's my dream. Okay, now another thing going on, that the question that was asked was, is Chewy the next GameStop? Well, it kind of seems like it is. There's still some question into me. There's still some question in my mind as to whether or not he actually is in Chewy. I don't understand how he was able to sell all of his shares that quickly without people noticing. That sounds like Seth's Combine? Sure it is. Let me tell you something. The test, they're working on a test that will allow you to become a qualified investor. Once this test is out, I think that the industry is going to shift in a big way. Eventually, I think Congress needs to make new laws. I don't think that the laws in like the securities law from like the 60s, it really makes sense anymore. 50s and 60s. I think the government is eventually going to have to change it. But in the meantime, you're going to have this kind of renaissance that's going to happen where there's going to be a new class of investor that is allowed to invest in these risky ventures. And the test that you take, you guys, especially you guys that are here like literally every day, it is going to be the easiest test you ever took. I mean, you're going to have to prepare for it. You're going to want to take practice exams and things like that to make sure that you really have the thorough understanding of it and everything. But pretty much everything that you're going to look at, you're going to be like, oh yeah, we know about that. We know about that. We've talked about that. I know what they're talking about. And then it is just training yourself to be able to take the test. And you'll pass it easy. New funding company as past no test straight funding is called fast. Oh, I think I've heard about that one. But that one's kind of funny because that one is just like, okay, we'll just skip the combine because like when you pass the combine, it's not real trading anyways. Doesn't that just kind of make it like a bucket shop though? I feel like that some of these funded trader companies are just like really pushing the limit. Anyways, food. Let me finish this food. I wouldn't say that all of them are bucket shops, but this thing where like you take the combine and then you pass the combine and you are not actually on a live account, we will pay out whatever money you make, but you're not actually on a live account. That's a bucket shop. I don't think that should be legal. I mean, maybe it probably is legal, but if it is legal, there should be laws passed to make it not legal, like I just think the whole thing is ridiculous. If the government implemented some form of test for someone to become an investor, yeah. So to be specific, it's to become a qualified investor. But I mean, anybody can invest. But there are certain, like, if you want to invest in private equity or a hedge fund and you're not like close friends and family, then it's deemed like too risky. So you have to have like a certain net worth and all of that to get into it. And the test will basically let you qualify that way instead of being informed enough, instead of being rich enough to be able to lose all the money. Anyways, okay, so but if the government implemented some form of test to become an investor, wouldn't they have started some sort of screening examination for people that go to places like casinos? Yeah. Well, it kind of makes you wonder, why isn't there a test for you to have to take for you to be able to trade options? But it's really just kind of the way that things developed with an antiquated law and all this sort of stuff. The day trade pattern rule needs to be withdrawn. I don't know. Don't really bother me. Like I do think that the rule is stupid and that they should get rid of it. But I also think that it really is to your benefit. Like, I don't know if you should really be day trading stocks if you don't have an account that large. Futures, it was always kind of like, well, the minimum amount of margin that you need to do things is enough to keep you safe in that instance. Now that we have micros, yeah, you can get people in there completely unqualified, risking a ton of money, and they'll blow the account and right away, and a lot of people do that. But, you know, you're only blowing like a $500 account, so I don't know if it's a huge deal. Really, as the barrier to entry for trading is low, I've been seeing a major uptick in people as young as 14 wanting to trade. Even stats show there is an uptrend in new traders in the past 10 years. Yes. So, well, let me tell you something, Herc. Here's what I saw. Was when I started doing this in 2017, we started this YouTube channel in like March of 2017, I believe. Okay. So it just was kind of happened as a thing for a contest on Futures.io. And then enough people subscribed to the channel and wanted me to keep making content that it just kept going, and it became its own thing. And like, it's really, I never thought that I would have 15,000 subscribers. Let's put it that way. Okay. Like when I started, I was like, oh, you know, if we got to 100, that would be kind of cool. And then like we did that within the first day, and I was like, what the heck? So, okay. Anyways, when I started doing it, nobody wanted to do it. The thing was, is it was a contest. It was a contest. They always do like a journal contest on Futures.io to encourage people to make journals on that website. And that time they wanted you to do a video journal. And I was literally the only one that did it. I think there was one other person that kind of made a half-hearted attempt to do journaling, but I was basically the only person that entered the contest. So I should have won. I should have gotten that NinjaTrader license. But they canceled the contest because I was the only one that did it. Okay. Back then, nobody wanted to trade. The volatility was so low back then. Oh my gosh, it was horrendous. I mean, it's almost as bad right now in the S&P 500, but the S&P 500 is so much higher now that it's kind of, but like, think about, you know, just even getting 4 ticks on the S&P 500 in a 30-minute period was difficult back then. Like, it was insane. And nobody wanted to trade. Okay? And that continued for a long time, up until the first wave that I saw was when the infinite money glitch on Robinhood happened. So there was a guy he was trading options, and he found this way where, due to a glitch in Robinhood's system, he could sell options and then use that to like buy more options and continue doing that in a circle. And you know, he would raise money from selling the options and then buy the options and push the stock up and all of this, right? So when that happened, like on Wall Street Bets, that made Wall Street Bets a lot more popular, and like a lot of people came into it. So at that point, YouTube started to pick up on trading as like an actual subject. And that's when my channel like really started taking off. There were other channels that they put the number they're making on it and, you know, all of this sort of stuff get much more popular. I'm not going to do those sorts of things, so I'm probably always going to be to a disadvantage to those channels. But like that's when it became a thing. And then 2020 came along, right? When 2020 came along, almost all of the people that I had seen, except for like the really dedicated guys that you see here at the beginning of the stream every day, but like the rest of the trading community just like got completely wiped out, decimated. And then that summer, you got a completely new set of people, and it was like 10 times the size. All of these just insane numbers of people coming in. And then the GameStop thing happened. So yes, it went from like nobody wanting to trade to everybody wanting to trade extremely quickly. And wouldn't be surprised to see like future swings like that, where you know, market is really tight, or there's a downturn and like nobody wants to trade anymore, and then the conditions are right and everybody wants to trade. You know, I even kind of dream of the day where like there will be a huge influx of people into futures trading specifically. Except for the downside of that, or the thing that kind of prevents that from happening, is that futures trading is just super hard to make money with. Like if you're doing stocks and you swing trade, you know, you hold the stocks, like you're holding your position for a couple of days, you're probably going to make money net. You might not make very much. It might not be worth it. You know, you will definitely go back and say, well, I should have just bought SPX and held it and I would have made more money, right? But you're not going to lose money. Whereas in futures trading, almost everybody that does futures trading, they just will lose everything that they put into it, right? So I think that might kind of put a cap on how many people come into futures trading in the long run. But I'm kind of seeing the machinations and stuff, like the smaller brokerages that want futures. We have these micro futures. The number of products that small traders can trade is just expanding more and more. Futures trading is likely to become more popular in the future. I need liquidity in the market to move my positions to take. Well, you know, right now in the treasury market, if you're trading range bound, you know, like Octavius did, what he took from 14 to 16. Seems like there's enough movement and market orders hitting into the liquidity for you to get filled. Anyways, so now that we've gone through all that and I'm done eating, should I go into the immunity thing? Okay, let me tell you what's actually going on with this Supreme Court ruling on immunity. What really happened was the lower court made a stupid ruling. They made the ruling that the president doesn't have any kind of immunity whatsoever, which is simply not backed up by the Constitution or past historical precedent at all. The president has always been that the president has some degree of immunity for official actions. That's always been the case, okay? So because the lower court made that stupid ruling, the decision from the Supreme Court was basically, yeah, everything that you guys learned in your high school civics class is still true, and they basically reprimanded the lower court for the ruling that they made. Okay? But they didn't actually rule on anything substantial. They just said, yeah, the president still has immunity for official acts. They didn't rule what is an official act, what is an incidental act, and what are obviously illegal acts. They didn't rule on that whatsoever. They sent that back to the lower court. A decision that had the lower court just done what we know is the historical precedent, which is that official actions do have immunity, and then said, well, this action is an official action, but this one isn't because it's illegal. That's one theory about how this could happen, is you can say, you cannot assassinate your political opponent because that's an illegal act, even if you're doing it as an official thing, because you're murdering somebody, that makes it not an official act. That's all those lower courts would have had to have done, right? And then it would have been a completely different situation. And then the Supreme Court could probably, rule on those particular things. It could come back, and that court case would have been done before the election. But because the lower court made the stupid decision that again, contradicted all historical precedent on this issue, that the president has no immunity whatsoever, now the case is not going to be finished until after the election. That's what's really going on with that ruling. Okay. So when you go on Reddit and you look at the mass hysteria that's going on about this, they're all saying something that's just objectively not true. They're saying, well, now the president could assassinate a political rival and there's nothing that you could do about it. Well, they're grabbing that because that was what was basically in Elena Kagan's dissent. I thought that her dissent was a very poor one. It wasn't here is the, what the Constitution says and the historical precedent and, all of the legal logic around this sort of to justify this decision. It was basically this is a terrible and dangerous ruling because I don't like it. Was basically her argument. I thought it was a terrible, terrible dissent. And frankly, a dissent that was probably intended to be political and to be used as fodder by Democrats to get everybody whipped up about it, right? It's funny how they want to move up the convention to ram Biden in. Well, that was before the whole debate debacle and all of that sort of stuff, right? I mean, I think you're going to see some pretty wild stuff because the Democrat Party is basically going to have to completely rebuild itself at this point. I really don't see how you recover from this Biden thing, but they're going to pretend and go through the motions until then, right? So we'll see how it happens. It's unclear as of yet whether Biden will drop out. I think that he actually will. Okay. But Biden drops out. Let's say Biden drops out. You replace him with somebody else. You go through the election. That guy gets trounced by the election. Once the election is over, then reality sets in. Then they will be like, okay, how did we actually get here and have to fess up to what's going on, right? But until then, they're going to ignore it and do everything that they can to get you whipped up and to try and get you to vote. And one of the best cudgels that they have to try and get everybody excited and push them to the polls is the Supreme Court. Now, the thing that is funny to me about this immunity ruling, again, it was a 6-3 decision, okay? You go back, the last Supreme Court justice, right, there was one where we were able to replace a very liberal justice with a somewhat conservative justice, right? They got rid of, well, they didn't get rid of her. She died. Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, and she was replaced with Amy Coney Barrett, right? If you go back to before that, it would have been a 5-4 decision. It would have been a 5-4 decision. And frankly, I think, I might need to go back into some more specifics about the makeup of the court over time, but I'm pretty sure that you would have to go back to like the Clinton years before you would get a Supreme Court makeup where they would not make the same ruling that they did, where they would have ruled the way that Elena Kagan wants. So it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. And the thing that again, that's if you want to understand like where the flaw is in a lot of the stuff that you're seeing online about this, the flaw is that they only ruled that the president has immunity for official actions, and they did not make any ruling on what official actions are or aren't. So they did not rule, okay, if you go and you assassinate somebody, then you have immunity. That's not what that decision says. That could come up again, and they might say, that's not an official action. You can't have an official action that's blatantly illegal. Do they need a new primary to choose a Biden replacement? Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit dodgy, okay? My understanding is that if Joe Biden drops out of the race and releases his delegates, that there are at least 3 states that happen to be swing states, by the way, that basically have a law that says that the party's candidate cannot be somebody that did not have the majority of primary votes or something to that effect. But basically, there are states that have protection against a brokered convention. So if it were to happen that way, it's unclear how things would work in that instance. Would those states modify their laws to make it so that the new Democrat candidate would be able to run? Would there have to be like a court case that goes through and all of that sort of a thing to get access? Like it's kind of bizarre, right? Yes, we have a Powell and LaGuardia speech in about 10 minutes. Because it's a panel discussion, I wouldn't expect them to say anything super market moving, but there is probably going to be some people sitting on their hands a little bit because that's on the calendar. Okay. Anyways, now the other way that they could do this, and the way that would make more sense, cause less issues, is if the 25th Amendment was invoked. Is it the 25th Amendment? Basically, if they were to say Biden is no longer mentally fit to be president and steps down as president through that 25th Amendment, because then those laws that, they basically say it is okay for the candidate if the candidate was like deemed mentally unfit. Okay. So that's one scenario that they've gone through. That's why you will see some conservatives getting mad at guys like what is his name? I can't remember. But there was a Republican. There was a Republican in the House that submitted a resolution to urge Kamala Harris and the cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment, right? And they were mad about that. Some conservatives were mad about that because they're like, that's helping the liberals. That's helping the liberals select a different candidate. Chip Roy, you're right. It's Chip Roy. I really like Chip Roy, but for some reason, Donald Trump attacked him, and the super far right just despises him now. I am still of the opinion that when you have one party and one presidential candidate that is obviously a joke, that it weakens the country overall. What is happening right now with the Democrat Party is bad for the country overall. I mean, it'd be nice to have a Republican in. Trump's not going to be my first choice, but I think that it'll be okay. But the situation with Democrats and everything, I think it weakens the country. I think it does. Every accusation is a confession, and it would be delicious if they did to Biden what they wanted to do with Trump with the 25th. It really would be. And I tell you what, the projection, it's been so insane, right? The Democrats have been pushing so hard. Oh, Donald Trump, he's losing it. He's not mentally fit. He slurred his words during a speech or something like that. Like, people don't, like, even regular people, that sometimes when they're talking, me here on this stream every day, I might slur a word or pronounce a weird word in a weird way or something like that, right? It's totally projection. It was totally there's nothing that we can really do about Biden, to make people see Biden is mentally competent. So the best that we can do is try and drag down Donald Trump. That's literally what they did. They're pretty brazen. I think everybody could see that that's what was happening. But then when the debate came, then they had to face the music. It's certainly delicious after the handrail incident in 2020 to have the entire world see that Biden has dementia. But I'm not so sure I would say that he has dementia. But he's losing his mental facilities. He is. He is not there. Listen, I don't think I'd make a good president. I think that, the 5 a.m. or the 2 a.m. call or whatever, that I would be terrible at dealing with that sort of a thing. Like, I want my 8 hours of sleep. I need my 8 hours of sleep. I kind of set things up to reduce my stress. For many, many years there, I worked a job that was much, much less demanding than I was capable of doing, simply because I didn't want to deal with the stress, because I hated it when I worked for Goldman. I did not succeed in that environment when there was like this huge demand from other people. I can do well in like something is urgent or like in trading, and I need to sit, like, that stress can get me to focus down. But like the constant demand from people, I don't think I'm very good at that. I wouldn't make a good president, right? And Biden, can he do that stuff right now? He can't. This is not. He can't even make it through a full debate without, because it wasn't like with Biden. It's not like he misspoke a word or slurred a word or something like that. It was like every answer that he was giving, the answer was really, really poor to begin with. And then, like, he would completely lose his train of thought through the answer and then pick up and say something that was complete nonsense afterwards. I mean, it was really that early on in that debate when he was talking about immigration, and then all of a sudden he says we really beat Social Security or Medicare or whatever it was. We really beat Medicare. That's what it was that he said, right? Complete nonsensical, right? And that's not dementia, but that is your mental facilities are going. And you're not fit enough to be president for the kind of demands that are put on a president. You're not. I think it's before your time, but you should look. Well, it was before my time, but I definitely have seen those clips. I definitely know what you're talking about, where they questioned his competency, and yeah, he just always had the right zinger, right? Anyways, Trump still looks pretty sharp. At least during the debate, he still looked pretty sharp. The Democrats, it's kind of funny. The Democrats basically have a game plan. Like, okay, after the debate, what are people thinking? There's this group of voters in Pennsylvania that are basically vulnerable to listening to Trump, if I can put it that way. So like, the more that they hear about Trump and the more that they're seeing stuff on the news and they're saying all of these nasty things about how Trump is so awful and everything, and their view of him like plummets. But then as soon as they actually hear him speak, their support for him goes up. And this constituency in Pennsylvania in particular is like a really key constituency that could determine the election if it weren't for all this other nonsense. But, you know, under all other things being equal, that would have been one of the major deciding factors over the election, right? And so the Democrats' plan is basically they have to say, well, you know, Donald Trump was his normal awful self at the debate, that he's combative and says nasty things and makes nasty jokes and all of these sorts of things, right? So that those voters in Pennsylvania see the Trump that's presented on by mainstream media that they hate, and not the Trump that when they actually listen to him in the debate and they like what he says. Okay? So when the blow up happened, and by the end of the debate, there were already Democrats out there calling for Biden to drop out and all of this sort of stuff, you could kind of see who is who and watch which people stuck to the strategy, which was to talk about, well, Donald Trump didn't have a very good debate either. I completely disagree with that. I thought that Donald Trump was extremely sharp. He was one of, it was possibly his best self. I'm not going to say that it was like the best debate that he's had ever, but I think he was in his top form. He was really sharp. He knew like every issue that he was talking about. He had something to say about it. Democrats will say that he lied, but like most of Trump's lies are just hyperbole, right? There's actually something behind them that they're saying it's a lie, but there's something behind it that's actually true that makes the gist of his comment still correct, right? Very, very fascinating to watch in real time. The ones that realize what's going on and are just like, well, we got to shift gears. And the ones that are like, I'm just sticking to the game plan. Right? Here's my water. Anyways, I kind of wonder how far this assassination sort of thing would go. You know what bothers me? Like, the thing that bothers me about the immunity thing, though, in the end is, again, like what they taught you in your high school civics lesson, you know, that one class where they talked about the Constitution and the formation of the government and stuff, is true. The only real true check on the president doing something illegal is impeachment. Like, could a president use an official action to facilitate a crime? Yes. The ruling from the Supreme Court did not say that couldn't possibly be a crime. They say that they has immunity from prosecution, which means that, you know, the Department of Justice or some DA in New York can't just come and prosecute him for that thing, right? There is a method for prosecuting a president for that sort of a thing, and it is impeachment. So, if Joe Biden decided today that he was going to assassinate Donald Trump with the military, Congress would impeach him. And then he would, you know, serve prison time for it. So this whole, but you know, it's propaganda at this point, right? They're not giving up. This is where you're gonna see the true. What was the word that I'm reaching for here? This is like the true weak point of liberal philosophy. They can't give up, essentially. They can never give up. They can never admit being wrong. In conservative philosophy, It's kind of built in. Because as a conservative, you basically have to admit that you've lost in the past. That something was changed. That, you know, what was the past establishment way of doing things was deemed ineffective or less effective. And there was a change, and that better change thing came through. And now that new change is the establishment position, right? So as a conservative, you have to admit that conservatives have been wrong in the past. Liberals can't do that. Liberals are always, we changed something and it was good, changing everything is good. And so if they do something and it doesn't work, what did the liberals do? They lie about it. They try and convince you that it was successful. They try and convince you that it was something else, right? Like a liberal implements policy. They do economic stimulus that wasn't required, and they pump way too much money into the economy. Prices go crazy. Inflation goes wild. Do they say, oh, my bad, we caused inflation, this was a bad bill or whatever it was? No. They're going to say, oh, actually, it was the greedy corporations that did the inflation. They can never admit. And granted, Donald Trump, he's kind of a little narcissistic, right? He will not publicly admit that he was wrong, but he will shift, right? If he changed his campaign manager's lie, he will fire people. Like when something's not working, he will change it. If we were to get into a trade war and we started seeing massive inflation and it was really hurting his poll numbers in the way that it's hurting Joe Biden, he would shift. He would say, we're going to do everything we can to get inflation under control. He would. In a way that Joe Biden and the left is incapable of doing. And so you're going to see this play out, because at this point, I think that like the overall like result of all of this is pretty clear, but they're going to fight it every step of the way, right? Like Joe Biden is going to fight giving up the nominee. Should we say being in office completely? Yeah, he's going to resist it. There was that story that, you know, his family was saying, stay in, right? And then if they do change him, they're going to fight really hard. They're going to use every arrow in their quiver to try and convince the country that the reality is not so, and try and win the election. And it's only going to be after they are completely decimated that they will finally sit back and say, you know what? We basically did everything we possibly could to cling on to power, and that was wrong. And we should have forced Joe Biden to, 2 years ago to not run so that we could have had a real primary and yada yada. And that was our bad as a party. But we towed the line because we thought that it would help us maintain power. We only cared about power. And only when the Democrat Party realizes that was their folly, will the American public trust them again. Okay, so we are getting some comments from Powell. The market seems to be moving up based on Powell's comments. That was a good 8 minutes into the thing, but yeah, I was a good 4 ticks off of that. I wonder, by the way, if I look at this drawing thing, this piece of news. Visible and auto scale. Why auto scale with this? No, it doesn't. Okay. I would kind of like something that like the next piece of news will always be at the right, and it will it will shift the graph over until you can see it. Yeah, disinflation trend shows signs of resuming. So I'm listening to what he's saying, but like I'm not picking up on like a clear change. So I can't see something that I can read out to you that is like, this is clear reason why they're moving the way that they are. Like the data represents significant progress. We need to be more confident before reducing policy rates. Need to be see more data like we've been seeing recently. We have the ability to take our time and get this right. Okay. We did get a little move. I think one of the things is that overall for the day, the trend has been up. So that might help them a little bit. I don't know if those comments are like really too terribly groundbreaking or anything. So I think, you know, if it had moved the market the opposite way, then it would be a different thing. So I don't know. I guess I'm saying I don't know if there's going to be like a huge retracement. The liquidity on the inside is pretty weak right now, though. So you can be careful. There's going to be volatility. Right? Let's just wait a little bit, see if it calms back down and retraces a little bit, or if they just hold the 18. At the moment, they're kind of making it look like they're going to just hold the 18. This is a new story I've seen here. Trump moves to overturn Manhattan conviction citing immunity decision. Trump began an effort on Monday to throw out his recent criminal conviction in Manhattan and postpone his upcoming sentencing, citing a new Supreme Court ruling that granted him broad immunity from prosecution for official actions he took as president, according to a person with knowledge of the matter. This is a dumb move. If we're talking about the Stormy Daniels case, it's a dumb move. In a letter to the judge overseeing the case, Trump's lawyers sought permission to file a motion to set aside the verdict, doing so just hours after the Supreme Court issued its landmark ruling involving one of Mr. Trump's other criminal cases. The letter will not be public until Tuesday at the earliest, after which prosecutors will have a chance to respond. The move came 10 days before the judge was set to sentence former president for his crimes in Manhattan, where a jury convicted him on 34 counts related to his cover-up of his sex scandal in the run-up to the 2016 election. Right? See, this, I don't think that it's going to apply. This would be where the judge is going to rule that the actions that he took in relation to Stormy Daniels are not official actions, they're civil actions, and therefore are not immune from prosecution. That's what's going to happen. And then you've set that precedent. So I think that this is the dumb move from his lawyers, but okay. Yeah, okay. The market's consensus view is for Trump to win the White House, the GOP to win the Senate, and Democrats to win the House per JP Morgan. They really think that Democrats are going to win the House? I think that that's a tough poll that, well, I have to go and look. That would be a bit of a surprise to me if the market was saying that's the default scenario, because I think it's really close. And everything that's going on, I think probably will hurt the ticket overall. Like, it will hurt people all the way down the ticket. Okay, they moved a little bit up. Okay, so basically, I think the big thing here is that this panel discussion is going a little bit differently from the way panel discussions usually go, and they are very much talking about monetary policy. So I think that we could probably see the market moving off of comments for the next probably 45 minutes. Because such an event is going to be at least an hour. It looks like we need to start the beginning of the playlist again. Tesla shares soar after better than expected Q2 deliveries. You think that the market was just reacting to the disinflation trend shows signs of resuming? Sure. I guess what I'm saying, though, is like he said a bunch of different things there. They're all things that are pretty much in line with what he's said in the past. So this looks to me more like traders gonna trade and robots reacting to things rather than them actually making a material change in their outlook. So if that's the case, you have to be a little bit careful about how persistent this flow could be. Right. If he had come through and he had said, well, the economic data is weakening and we're very concerned about the market falling into a recession now, that would be which is kind of what I believe at the moment. That would be a shift in their outlook and would drive very persistent flows that would probably last all day. But as it stands right now, I think that you're a little bit vulnerable to pullbacks. I think that they're probably okay because the overall flow for the day was up before that too. But, you know, you're going to get some potholes here. And he's still talking, so he could say something hawkish that the market really doesn't like. There could be something much more substantial that he says. Hard to say. Hard to know. It's probably, I guess what I'm really saying is I'm not going to be taking a live trade for the next 45 minutes. I think that's what I'm really trying to say. Low volume but strong delta. This is about a 40k shift in cumulative delta since 30 minutes before the open. And pretty persistent flow overall, for sure. So when I come back over to here, I'm kind of like, okay, Jolts. Well, we got Jolts in 10 minutes. Let's not forget that. That might matter more than what Powell said, but I'm not sure what's driving the upside flow. The Japanese yen is looking good, though. First good uptrend in the Japanese yen that I've seen for a while, so. Yeah, market buy orders are driving it. Yeah. Oh, come on. Pretty persistent imbalance in market buys. I don't know what the cause of that flow is. It's not because of this speech. It started long before this speech, but there's a pretty persistent buy order flow today. So probably what you could do is wait for the Jolts and wait for the speech to be over and then buy it and hope that that order flow continues to persist throughout the day, and maybe you get a little bit of a buy from that. Especially if, say, for instance, Jolts was like really strong and pushed the market down, we could still buy it, the dip off of that. Well, and you can see they were selling at 18, but there's a decent iceberg there. Or there was. Here's a thread on Reddit that is pertinent to my interests. Change my view. I don't think it's a morally bad thing to still consume works made by controversial people. I think it is. So everything that you consume is data going into the machine learning part of your brain, and it has an impact on you. And that impact can be negative. So there are major downsides to consuming works from bad people. Like I don't think that it's going to destroy your soul or anything like that if you read like Mein Kampf or something. But like if you are constantly reading communist works, it's going to affect the way that you see the world in a negative way. You've read it and it's an annoying read. Well, that's interesting. I don't know. It tempts me to go into like a completely different tangent related to all this stuff with Donald Trump, but I don't know if I really want to get into it. I mean, I'll tell you what it was, but I don't necessarily need to like expand on it. But like one of the things that really irks me in politics is that liberals have turned the word fascism into any right-wing dictatorship is basically what they consider fascism. So like if you have a president and he's a Republican / conservative, and he's maybe a little bit more authoritarian than you would like, then that means that they're fascist. I think it's just so ridiculous. And so then what they do is they try and compare the things like what Mustache Man and so forth said at the time and comparing it to what's going on now. And I just don't think that they're really very comparable. I went through a phase right after high school where I was obsessed with how Nazi Germany became a thing. Oh, okay. I don't know, man. The population is way more malleable than people realize, right? Everybody thinks that they're acting independently and that they aren't easily influenced, but when you look at the way that things play out on a national scale, you can see that actually they are very easily influenced. I don't think that I'm necessarily immune to that either. I have a uniquely independent streak in me as a result of the ADHD, but that doesn't mean that I'm immune. This was back when you had to stand at a counter with a copy of and books. Oh. So checkout was awkward. Right, this was back when you had to get it from the library. Getcha. Okay, so they're at the lower end of this range. I am seeing the cumulative delta shift around here a little bit. That's a little bit concerning. It kind of looks like the uptrend is ending for now. We'll see if it's just a temporary blip or if there's really going to be like a shift. Anyways, the reason why that subject came up, and I want to reiterate, is that you have to realize that your brain is just like a chat GPT in many ways. It's a machine learning neural network, and everything that you view, everything that you see and hear, every movie that you watch, every book that you read is training data that gets sent into that neural network and that the neural network trains on. Now, how that will affect your brain, that's kind of the thing that, like, we don't really understand very well about neural network, how neural networks work. It's like, what is the best way to train a neural network and things like that? But they do have an effect on you. Can you tell how much delay is on your stream? Well, if you look, oh, actually, you know, I have it turned off here. Hold on a second. I need to turn on the big clock so that you can really, really easily see the time down at the bottom. So you can see down at the bottom what the exact time on my computer is. And then you can look at what the exact time on your computer is and see the difference. But in most circumstances, you should not see it be more than 5 seconds off. That is not to say that you should be following my trades or relying upon me as a part of your edge. Okay, I want you to be able to make your own trades, but I try and keep that lag as minimal as possible so that you guys can have real-time interactions with me. Yeah, it should give or take like 4 seconds, right? Yeah. Theoretically, it should only be a 2-second delay, but due to other circumstances, including circumstances on your end, it can be more like 5 seconds. Okay, they are polling for Jolts. Maybe some of that downside action was profit taking, but let's see where Jolts go. So let's see here. They're looking for a reading of 7.95 million. Let's see what we get. Kind of suspect that it could be a weak one like last time. Let's see. Okay, apparently not. 8.14 million. And that did push the market down. Okay, well, so now we are kind of getting that scenario that I was talking about. Let's see if I can, on sim here, if I can get away with something here. Okay. It's not bad. I'm thinking that whatever the flow was that was causing the buying earlier may persist. So I'm going to try and build out a position here. And if I can give myself enough room, I'm doing this on a sim contract. Okay. Well, that's not bad so far. Okay. So I gave myself like what, 3 ticks of breathing room there? I want to use your program because you don't have the money to buy junk. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, well, I don't know. If you don't have Jigsaw, but what platform are you going to be using? Like I'm assuming that you're still trading, right? So you should be able to get something that is reasonable to be able to work with, even though it's not as good as Jigsaw to watch the order flow with. I don't know, like that trade that I just had right there, where it's kind of the stuff that I was seeing at 14.5 or so, and I was able to take a tick out of there multiple times. The delay that we got is probably enough that you wouldn't, you know, by the time you saw that, it would be too late for you to do anything with it, right? Oh, I think Lucas is asking, did you arrive at any conclusions as to how Nazi Germany happened? I could say something here, but I'm gonna hold my tongue. Okay, this is going pretty good so far, man. This is one that I really don't think I could pull off without multiple contracts, though. I mean, it's your stream, no one would stop you. I don't know if I should, though. It would just take us down a rabbit hole that we maybe shouldn't go down. maybe I can't help myself. I think that when you ignore legitimate concerns and or trials of your citizens for long enough, that they might turn to monsters. That's what I think. That's what I think was in large part was, you know, the Versailles Treaty, or was it the Versailles Treaty or whatever? You know, imposed very strong hardships on the German people that were ignored, and so they created a scapegoat, which was the Jews. Jews had nothing to do with it, but they create a scapegoat, and they turn to a monster. And that is, you know, I feel that is a controversial statement because I see seeds of that today. That there are legitimate trials that people in the world are experiencing today that global elites want to just ignore. And, you know, the more that you ignore it, you shouldn't be surprised if the people turn to a monster and or start believing crazy things. You know, like this whole thing going on with the left and attacking Israel and basically like supporting Hamas and stuff. It's just, well, so their entire thing that like this is all the Jews' fault and everything, yeah, that was complete nonsense, right? But they were suffering. They were. The policies both imposed upon them by outside powers and, frankly, the policies from the previous governments were poor and not good for the people in general. And that was what allowed this conspiracy theory that the Jews are doing all of this to fester. Right. That's controversial because I can come in here and I can say, look, you can't ignore the citizens' concerns about importing so much illegal immigrant labor and compromising the security of the nation with having a porous border. You can't ignore the concerns that people have with the jobs and manufacturing jobs being exported overseas and the damage that that's doing to their lives. And you ignore that for long enough, you're going to get a monster. Some people think that Donald Trump is a monster. I don't really think that he's so much a monster. I kind of feel like that Donald Trump is like your last chance to realize what's going on. And if you continue to ignore it, then you will really get a real monster will come along. So the real question is, since it happened, do you believe something like that could happen again? Yes. Things like that do happen all the time. Just not in Western countries. Let's say. I have extreme faith in the American system that it would not happen in America, but if you screwed up bad enough, it could happen. Okay, well, we've done pretty okay with this position so far, but it is back down to like the bottom
block
here.
buy.
Okay, and that's interesting. The block buy coming in there. I will put a stop in because I'm concerned about my ability to focus on this. Something like that as industrialized mass murder. Well, yeah, but I mean, there have been genocides, though, right? Like, so I think that in this subject, that you need to differentiate between the genocide itself and the the political, ideological kind of conditions that leads to a dictatorship like that. Okay. There are some people out there that try and present what happened in Germany, quote unquote genocide, as like an unprecedented event. But genocide is really extremely typical for humans. It's really, like, quite frankly, folks, it's a very unsavory thing to have to realize about humans, but humans, genocide is built into your genes, man. It's built into the human's very gene code. So if you're looking like from an evolutionary psychological perspective, okay, humans are around because they were willing to perpetuate genocide and some other subspecies wasn't. You look at monkeys. Monkeys will practice genocide. You get 2 tribes of monkeys, one tribe will hunt down and kill the other tribe. Okay. The industrialized scale of it was certainly unique. But what allowed you to get into that industrialized scale, right? In order for you to take power like that in the first place, you had to have been ignoring people for a long time. What's up with the dollar just got tanked? Well, okay, so we were seeing the dollar move down because Powell's comments that what should we say were Powell's comments? Basically saying that we're getting good progress on inflation, that we're seeing more disinflation. Market really liked that. Market moved up, and you saw the dollar plunge quite a bit because of that. Now we got Jolts job openings back up to 8.14 million, above the previous reading of 8.059 million and above the estimate of 7.95 million. And the market really didn't like that. Now, I went and I took a speculative trade in there that the buying flow that we've seen today would persist, but that trade looks like that was a loser, and I scratched it. So I think I executed that one really, really well with the multiple contracts. I was able to build up a really decent kind of buffer so that I was able to just scratch it at break even. But it did end up being a negative trade. And the market is reading that Jolts as pretty significant. And as a result, now you're seeing the dollar strengthen again because rates are going higher. Talking about effing monkeys. I know, right? Yeah, the progressive left is very similar in racial rhetoric to, well, okay. But I guess my kind of point is that, like, people will say, okay, well, it's because of this certain conservative ideology where you identify a certain group as the other and and that's what leads to this sort of a thing happening. And I disagree. I think that Germany would not have happened if not for the trials and tribulations that the German people were put under after World War I because of a really, really awful peace treaty that just really, really hurt the German people. It's when the people feel so ignored that they become vulnerable to latching onto such extreme ideologies. And the reason why I say that in regards to, like, the right versus left dichotomy in the United States is because right now the conservatives are the ones that are listening to those concerns. The conservatives are the ones that have said, hey, you know what, you've been kind of screwed over for the past 30 years and globalism isn't working and we need to change some of these things. And the left are the ones that are trying to ignore it and just maintain the status quo. And if they continue to ignore the status quo, and they were able to continue to suppress the conservatives and keep globalism in place, which is not happening, by the way, thank goodness. Okay, there has been like a shift around the world towards anti-globalism because of Donald Trump. Thank goodness. But if they were able to successfully continue to suppress this for long enough, it would get worse, and that's when you really do have a strong risk of a, you know, maniacal dictator mustache man like figure coming about. That's not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the warning. Donald Trump is the, if you don't fix this now, you have like 1 or 2 more chances to fix this, and then if you don't, then a presidential candidate, you know, 2 or 3 elections from now is going to be a mustache man. That's what I think. And they could come from the right or the left. It could be a Bernie Sanders like guy, because there's people on the left that are also kind of mad about the globalism, like Bernie Sanders, right? Bernie Sanders is mostly harmless, but there are some other Democrat politicians that, you know, you never know what they could be hiding, right? I challenge you to read Mein Kampf and not feel like you're reading the insane ramblings of a leftist college student. Really? Well, this is other thing is like, was Nazi Germany actually right wing or left wing? I feel like that the political circumstances of the time and the ideology of the time and everything are significantly different, that you can't really compare it to anything that any kind of ideology that we're seeing today. But hey, who knows? I was just thinking about this. I have had an indicator that, I know this is like totally random, I'm going from that, but I had a drawing tool that was like a news event, right? Event? Ooh. Oh, it's I said like, what was the level before the news? That might be worth having, but I kind of like the way that it looks with them sideways like that. But that maybe needs to be more transparent or something. I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know how to deal with it. Fascism has elements of liberalism, socialism, and nationalism that make it very yeah. I think you're right. Yeah, there you go. It depends on how you define things. It's like China people say that they're communists, but I'd argue they're more fascist. Yeah, I totally agree with that one, man. Like, there are corporations in China now, and China has basically become like, economically speaking, they are more similar to fascism than anything else I've seen. They're not really communism anymore. You have corporations that are corporations, and certain privileged individuals get to make the money from the corporation, but they have to do everything that the government tells them. And that's basically how it worked in World War II Germany. Yeah. I think one of the problems that you get in this situation is that really this is like your brain is a machine learning thing, and like how you categorize and things and stuff. This is all kind of fuzzy stuff, right? It's all kind of fuzzy things. That the world, it does not all fit into neat little buckets the way that you might want. Pull up the cost basis? Yeah, sure. So they came just one tick shy of the seller cost basis and bounced. I think defining fascism as exclusively right-wing is more of a strategic rhetorical device more than anything else. Well, so I think the issue is that there is kind of like, what is right-wing and what is left-wing from a thematic standpoint versus a policy standpoint versus a theological, not theological, what is the word? Philosophical standpoint. Okay. So when I talk about right versus left, I'm almost always referring to right versus left from a philosophical standpoint, which is to say that right, or well, let's say really right wing is really defined in relation to left wing, I think. But left wing is whatever the system of power is right now, we should bring it down and replace it with something else. That is from a philosophical perspective what I define as left wing. And right wing is not that we should never change anything, but it tends to support what is already there and says that when we do change things, that we need to do it slowly and intentionally. That's conservative. Or and you know, maybe right wing could just be more generally defined as resistance to change. Okay. But right wing and left wing from a thematic standpoint, right wing is essentially what happened in the past was great and things were so great and we should try and retain that glory, is basically what thematically the right wing is. And so you can have and then there is policy wise, right? Left wing is really thought more of as communism, like super far left wing would be communism, and super right wing would be like a theology based country or something like that, right? Where like the Pope controls things. Okay. So you can get something that is extremely left-wing policy-wise, but is thematically very right-wing. And that is essentially Nazi Germany, as I understand it. Because there was elements of socialism in it. Which is funny because they hated communists, right? But the way that their political system and like their economy worked is very similar to the way that China works right now. But thematically, it was, we were used to be a great nation and all of these, the Jews did all of these awful things, and so we need to kill all the Jews so that we can retain our former glory. Oh yeah, and we also need to take over all of these lands so that we have room for our people to grow. Right, that was basically that philosophy. And so anytime that you get a politician saying, hey, we've kind of declined and there were some things that we did better in the past and we would like to go and bring those things back, then there are these idiots, these on the Commaderati or the Twitterati or whatever, that are like, oh, that's fascism, right? You can't say that like there were some things about the past that were great that, you know, and we made mistakes and we should change them back. Can't ever say that. Come on. Yeah, China calls it communism with Chinese characteristics. I know, this is such a funny thing. I tell you what, it's really unfortunate the way that China has gone with Xi. It really is. They made such strong progress, and Xi has like completely erased it. And you can see like the way that it's impacted China and their growth and everything extremely negative the past 4 years since he basically took that hard left turn. You know? Pretty insane to watch. That one. But I don't know. The whole thing here is that today's battle is completely different. Today's battle is completely different, because today's battle is basically, well, we had this world order that was based on international free trade, and that has harmed our country and certain constituents in our country, and so we need to change it. And so it's globalism versus anti-globalism, right? And that is completely different from any of these other kind of political arguments that we had in the past. Now, you go back further than that. You go back to, before the two world wars, then you start to see that battle was had, right? Because basically what happened was the conservative view of it, which was that we need to protect our country from, other countries destroying our industries, that we can't have completely free trade. And then after World War I and World War II, the free trade argument won out, and we saw tremendous economic growth from that. And so we realized that, we were totally wrong. We do want to have free trade. But now you're having this pushback, like, well, okay, we should have free trade, but that doesn't mean that we should let all of our manufacturing just go to another country. That hasn't been good for us. And that has national security concerns along with it as well. And during Donald Trump's presidency, that, people kind of came around to realizing that. So now the question is, where do we actually shift? How do we actually shift so that we can maintain as much economic growth as we can, but we still protect our citizens and our industries, right? And trying to call somebody that's asking that question and trying to come up with solution and saying that they're fascists is just ridiculous, right? It's just ridiculous. But that is the state of American politics today. Okay, well, I built out my position at 14. They did stop me out, but it's still sitting there, so I don't know. It's been long enough, though, that I don't know. I'm kind of giving up on the overall idea of it. It kind of is starting to look a little bit too random to me. Like, look at the flows. Okay, good, strong up move, down move, a little bit like, okay, what? I don't know what it's going to do next. It could do that, it could do that, I don't know. No way, it's kind of turning into random flows. And since I don't really have a whole lot of drivers of order flow to predict, I don't think that I get a trade. I did take the sim trade. I think that was some good practice and everything, though. That sort of kind of keeps me warm, because if I don't touch the DOM at all for several days and everything, and then I go and I start trying to take trades and I just start doing stupid stuff. So see, I shouldn't have brought the subject up, because you successfully got me into diving down into it. Now people are going to parse that conversation out and try and make me look bad or something. Yeah, we're not to that point yet, but if you continue to push open border policies, I think that you probably will eventually get to a point where there will be people that will be like, everybody that's here illegally, let's just kill them. It's a possibility. It's a scary possibility. I don't want it to happen. So maybe let's just enforce our laws so that we never get to that point. I think it's more likely people. Oh, no. I'm not talking about, there's not any comments anymore. I was kind of more like it, just going through and I said, I wasn't going to bring it up, but then I did. And we, I talked about it for 15 minutes, right? It's kind of an interesting conundrum, because I think that if you really wanted to maximize viewership, it's probably best to not talk about politics as much as possible, right? But I think I'd be doing you guys a disservice if we never discussed those things, because this discussion in particular, these are kind of some of the well, you know, like your brain is a machine learning algorithm and everything, right? And they tend to make certain mistakes, right? And so what I'm doing here is I'm explaining to that model of your brain why the certain model that you might be using to interpret those events might be wrong, essentially, right? I'm giving you a more detailed model where I'm saying it's not just liberal and it's not just left and right. It's there are different kind of axes of left and right. There's a philosophical left versus right, there's a policy left versus right, and there's a thematic left versus right. And now you can kind of parse various political movements based on those different axes. And you will get a better interpretation of what that particular political movement really is about and where things are likely to go or not go based on that. So I'm giving you something that I think is really helpful to understanding the political world, and thus can help you in your trading when politics matter to the trading. But there's going to be some people that don't want to hear it. And it ain't nobody complaining right now, but I'm always a little bit weary when we're talking about it. Especially since, you know, YouTube it certainly has its own agenda and things like that, right? Like if I was famous, if I was like as popular as Dr. Disrespect, I think I would have a problem. I think there would be an army of people trying to bring me down, you know what I mean? Because they wouldn't like what I say. Oh, there's a little move up to 15.5. That guy, big problems. Yeah, I shouldn't. Probably a bad example because that guy has big problems. I tell you what, like when that thing first happened and I saw everybody on Reddit like really blowing up about it, and it really interested in me. It really did. Because, you know, at the height of streaming, he was the top streamer, right? You know, everybody was like, okay, well now this piece of information. So for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, this streamer, it's basically been outed that he had conversations of a sexual nature with a minor through private messaging feature of Twitch. Okay, so like, when it basically admitted it, or when it first started leaking, people were like, well, now what do we have to do? Now what are we going to do? And I'm like, oh man, guys, you were falling victim to this false narrative that like you have to do something. It's like, you didn't watch Dr. Disrespect before. Now that you know that he had inappropriate conversations, you can still like not watch him, right? Like, hey, if you did watch him and you enjoyed watching him, I you know, you could watch him and just kind of ignore the unsavory parts about it, right? But I've kind of shifted on that a little bit since then, because now it's basically I'm looking at it and it's like, okay, like he did do the big bad, like all of the worst of what people were saying. Like it was a minor. He knew that it was a minor. He didn't start having the inappropriate conversations with them until after he knew that they were a minor. And then he lied to us about it for 2 years. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. I don't think you should watch him. I'm not going to watch him. Because that's a man that lacks integrity in the worst way. Yeah, you never watched him. I never did either, really. Oh yeah, that guy. This is so funny, right? This is pretty wild. You know, some people are saying that like stuff is coming out and that like there could be other people that could get interesting. That could be scary. Here's my position. I have a position on this, right? Because you know, like I see some people having like some really wild conversations. They're like, well, she was 17 though. Like a 17-year-old girl can still be hot. No, they are not. All people, whether they are 17 or 30, whether they are male and female, they are gross and disgusting, and I want nothing to do with it. That's my position. And unless their name is Melissa and they're married to me, and then maybe they're kind of cute. But otherwise, gross, disgusting. I don't want to talk about them. I don't have any kind of conversations of that whatsoever. If somebody thought that they were having a conversation of that nature, they were wrong, because I would only ever talk about the financial markets with them. Like, it's just, that's my position now. It's sad that I have to have a position like this, but that's my position. We'll take your advice and start trading. Oh, okay. I don't know if I would necessarily ever advise anybody to start trading futures, but if you're into it, futures can be really fun. And I provide a good framework to help you get started that will give you the best chance of being successful with it, even though you must realize that the overwhelming probability is that you will not have much success with it. Okay. Could be. Ever watch Chris Hansen? They do it the once and they've done it more for sure. I don't know what you mean. Considering the most winners like him are in a position of power and respect of younger, especially more like only got caught finally. Yeah, so I saw some statistics about this. That like pedophilia is estimated to be lower than like 5%, but then when you take it into teenagers, it's more like 10 to 20%. Like, I think that our society is in denial about this issue. Like this is a societal issue that will always exist, and that we always need to be concerned about, and that we need to take the utmost care and precaution to, prevent our children from falling victim to these predators. They'll always be around, and that there's probably some evolutionary reasons why that's a thing, right? Because everybody kind of treats it like, well, it's like nobody feels that way, and there's absolutely something terribly wrong with you, and yada yada yada. And my position is, well, it's absolutely wrong, and it's a terrible thing, but like, it is going to be fairly common and typical in a society. And I think it's important to realize that, because when people take this other position, it's like really easy to get complacent about it. Like, again, I've bashed on the left enough today, but like, the left is getting complacent on this issue. The left is creating an environment in their cultures that enables child predators. It enables them, and it's very scary to me. And with the Dr. Disrespect thing, I mean, it's like, well, she was 17, but still, I think that it, especially when you combine that with all of the lying that he did about it, that it would be best that people turn their backs on him, because you don't want any chance of that, you don't want to normalize that whatsoever. You know what I mean? And I think there's another lesson that we can kind of take from this, and that is that the people that we are putting into positions of power through social media are very often either extremely ill-equipped to be able to deal with it, or are just like exactly the wrong kind of person that you want to have in that kind of a position. And that's another thing that we really need to face. Because I tell you what, these kids, when they're done growing up, 'cause I think everybody has this experience. It's the worst when it's a politician, right? You have a politician, you revere that politician, you work really, really hard to get them elected, and then they don't get elected, or they do get elected, and once they get elected, they start doing all of these things that you don't like. right? But one way or another, their standing in your mind will eventually get dashed if you put a politician on a pedestal, right? And it's a necessary thing that everybody has to go through, but it's also, to some extent, it's kind of a sad thing. Like it does kind of damage you. Like your ability to just give yourself to something is diminished. And I think that the ability to just like completely believe and give yourself to something is a nice thing, as long as it's like a good thing that you're giving yourself to, right? And once you're damaged, and you're cynical, it's not the same thing. So everybody goes through that, but like with these kids, man, just freaking everything that they've done for some of these people, just everything that's gone on and anybody that you liked has just been destroyed, right? I think this is going to do some real psychological damage to people. I think that we need to do more work to ensure that the people that are actually becoming prominent, like in the streaming community, we got Twitch. Let's do more work to make sure that the people that are the most watched on Twitch are people that we can actually be proud of being the top viewed people, and that are going to understand the responsibility that is and take it seriously and not do stupid things like talk to minors. Good grief. That's something that we gotta face. I don't know how you do it, but I guess if I was at Twitch, I would have a program. I would have an education program, and anybody that gets over a certain size, we would invite them to that program to teach them all of these things and some basic PR skills and all of this, so that they understand the responsibility that it is and don't do dumb things. I mean, people with power, they're going to tend to abuse their power, but it shouldn't be this bad. It shouldn't be this bad. They came back to the 16. I could have held on to that. But if I had held on to that, I would only be getting the 4 ticks that I had. So. But who knows? Maybe that buying that we had earlier that was really persistent, maybe it comes back. It could come back. I don't know what the cause of that is, so there's no way for me to be able to predict, but it's a possibility, right? Oh, you know what? I was rereading A-Paul's comment. You must be saying, oh, well, he probably did it to more people. Maybe. I think that Dr. Disrespect was playing the like. Okay, so like if somebody messages me, it's gonna be, do you want something? You have a question. My goal is to get you to ask your question as early as possible and deal with your question as efficiently as I can, because I want to be able to help as many people as I can. But some people, they just love the the social validation and the power that they feel because people are messaging them, and they mess around with it. Like there was this other thing with Dr. Disrespect where he was talking to a transgender sex worker or something like that, and it really looked to me like he was just screwing around with her, like he was kind of playing the social engineering game with them. You shouldn't do that. Not if you are in a position of authority or position of, I don't know what you would want to call it, but if you're some rando. I don't think you should do it, period. But you're some rando that nobody knows, and I guess you can get away with it. But you shouldn't play that game. You shouldn't mess around with people. Like, keep it to business. I try to keep it to business. Just be incredibly autistic about it, right? let's see here. We got about 5-10 minutes left. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime. Well, I don't know. So it looked like they were building a little bit of a hole around 16 and that they might rotate around that, but then it moved out of that pretty easily. It looks to me like the market is still relatively free to move around. So I'm not entirely sure what that next move will be though, because there's not a clear. I would say if I had to take a bet, it would be long. I think that the imbalance is still like net in favor of longs, but I think that my chances of being able to predict it in this location are a little bit less than normal. Let's come over to Zero Hedge and see if they had said anything about Jolts. This kind of brings me back to, I think that Jolts is kind of like not a very useful number, but after 2 months of sharp declines in the number of job openings moments ago, Biden's highly politicized Department of Labor reported in May that the number of job openings unexpectedly spiked by a whopping 221,000, far above the 7.95 million estimate, from a downward revised April print of 7.919 million, down 140K from the original print of 8.059 million. But this was only possible thanks to the huge downward revision in the past month. Indeed, when we look back, we find that the Biden Department of Labor has now revised lower 14 of the last 17 months, something which statisticians would normally call bullshit. I'm not necessarily going to call it bullshit, but it definitely should make you weary about what the current number is, right? There's some sort of thing going on right now that the initial numbers aren't taking into account very well. The current number of job openings was up no matter what, though. Well, when you look at the composition, you get a slightly different idea. You see, of the 221 total increase in job openings, virtually all, or some 179,000, were government jobs, which, as everyone actually knows, are not real jobs, but simply parasites on taxpayers and create no actual economic output. As shown below, government job openings are fast approaching a record high. And since virtually all the job growth was government jobs, one would expect that private job openings was a disaster. And sure enough, at 7.055 million, it remained at a 3-year low. To summarize, government job openings, which contribute nothing to the economy and are just a form of wealth redistribution, are soaring while private sector job openings are crashing. That's interesting. It looks like range-bound per holiday. Well, yeah, I don't know, Octavius, about that. I feel like that even just beyond the action just around Powell speaking and Jolts, we still had a decent amount of movement, and like you might still, the later that you get, the worse the trades are, and I don't think that I would be taking a trade at this point, but it's probably still possible for you to pull 4 ticks out of this market. And all that is to say that I think today was a relatively okay day for a summer. Tomorrow, though, tomorrow might be really, well, actually, I take that back. So we have some news tomorrow, too, right? So tomorrow might actually be relatively active. Let's see here. So tomorrow, we get ADP, we get services PMI, and we get unemployment claims. So I think that you're likely to get a decent amount of activity tomorrow. Friday might be the day that is like just absolutely crappy. Like, well, on Friday you're gonna have non-farms payroll, so it's probably gonna be like non-farms payroll, and then like the market opens and then it's dead. Like, they'll all go home early on Friday. And then next week, you get CPI, but otherwise it's a pretty sleepy week. So I don't know. This is kind of a weird, because otherwise it would be like really, really bad. But it's, you know, all of the economic news gets packed into this week. So I guess another thing would be like later in the month, because this month is so front loaded, the later action in the month might be pretty hard. I'm glad that I was able to get at least one trade this week. Was it this week? I think it was on Monday that I took the trade. Yeah. Because otherwise I don't know when I'd be taking trades. Okay, what's my phone going? Oh, okay, we're good. It's just giving me the regular warnings about meeting events. My mind is thinking back now to this indicator and like, can I change it so that it's a little bit better at like not covering over, you know, your chart? I think it looks cool, but it covers the chart. I don't like that. Maybe I could make it so that it's just always, well, I will make a change so that one's vertical and one's horizontal. And the horizontal, the one that is like your normal horizontal orientation, I'll just make it always be like down here at the very, very top. This one right here, by the way, like it's job openings and labor turnover survey, that should just be Jolts. So I should also modify the data to make the names of them shorter. I'll like keep that and add a new property called short title. And yeah.
Block sell.
Okay, so big block sell at 16 kind of says that we are definitely sticking around here for a while now. So I might just end it a little bit earlier. I feel like I'm kind of like, otherwise I'll get started on another dangerous subject to talk about. You think I'm safe? I don't think I went too far overboard today, did I? I definitely said some controversial and/or political things, but I don't think that I said anything that I would like regret. Right? But whatever. Back to, well, I got some work to do, and then, you know, we get to read the mass hysteria on Reddit. So, and I will try doing a little bit of work on that indicator, because I would like to be able to give that to you guys in the next, like, week. Okay, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Stay excellent.